welcome back to Intro to Tech Skills. We have a trusty map back on the screen here. Remember, we're on day 2. We've had so many sessions yesterday and also today. And up next, we've got actually a more career-focused session. Salman, what are we talking about in the next one?
Yeah, we have such an amazing session because here it's going to be on resumes. And you're going to be hearing from Kristen, who has 7 years experience at Microsoft doing recruiting, and also Jen, who has gone through a career switch. She's going to be talking more about that later in the session. Hey, don't forget to check out all the other things like AI gaming, Minecraft Time Machine, and the Cloud Skills Challenge, and ask us your questions because we're going to have lots of time for the end of the session to ask them back to Jen and Kristen.
Exactly. So now it's time to welcome and hand off to our first speaker for this session, Principal Cloud Developer Advocate right here at Microsoft, Jen Looper.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here to talk to you about a topic that is near and dear to everyone's heart, whether you've been in the industry for years, whether you're a career changer, whether you're a student and you're just getting into the job market. How am I going to build a resume? How is it going to stand out to recruiters? So we're going to talk about some really cool tips and tricks. I'm going to walk you through how to create your own resume online using an online tool, github.dev. But most importantly, we have someone super special here, Kristen, who is in university recruiting. So let me just mention that I'm a Principal Cloud Developer Advocate on the Next Gen team. I'm here to talk to students and faculty and anyone really who wants to learn, whether you're a beginner or a career switcher or looking to really level up. We're here for you on the Next Gen team. But I'm so happy to invite my friend Kristen to give an idea of where she's at right now.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, I'm Kristen Straube, and I'm a university recruiter here, and I have the great honor of recruiting hardware engineering talent. So that's everything from optical engineering, silicon engineering, hardware program managers, hardware engineers, mechanical engineers, and electrical engineers. So I know that's a mouthful, but I get to hire the hardware engineering talent.
That's really exciting. I love hardware. It's really, for all the makers out there, you know, you might take a look at some of the amazing listings that Kristen will be able to point you towards on our career sites. So I want to go ahead and make this a very interactive session. I'm going to be coding along with all of you in a split screen experience. And I'm going to be asking Kristen some questions that only she can answer. So we're going to really leverage Kristen's expertise as a university recruiter on all those tips and tricks to get you started and to make your resume really stand out. But before we get started, I want you to do 2 things for me. One, you might have already done if you've been taking sessions with us recently or today, which is to create a GitHub account and log in. So if you can just go to github.com and create an account for yourself and log in, you'll be ready to start coding alongside with me and Kristen. This is all free, and this is a great way to kind of dive into the open source and also sneakily to start your own portfolio in GitHub. So I want you to all kind of work through that and get your login all sorted. Then the second thing I want you to do is to go to this kind of long link, which is aka.ms/build-22-resume-workshop. So the Build 22 Resume Workshop is the step-by-step process that we're going to walk through on GitHub while we're in GitHub building our own resume. So it's, you know, it's this kind of cool interactive way that I would like to go ahead and get started. So take a look. I think we'll be able to drop that link into the chat, but I want you to go to that link. And once you're there, you're going to see this Build Resume Workshop template, which is available for you. And what it is it shows you, it walks you through how to build your own resume on GitHub, and you're going to end up with something that looks like this. Your final project will be, you know, your name, your title, contact skills, and education on one side, work experience on the other. And we're going to just walk through step by step of how to go about building this. We're going to do the whole thing in the browser, so I think that you're going to really enjoy this. So I hope everyone has their GitHub account ready and is looking at this website. What you could do is split your screen like I'm doing, follow along with the workshop, and then we'll code all together. So I have my fancy schmancy GitHub portfolio here. So while we're talking about your GitHub kind of presence, which is really important for standing out as a technologist, you know, you can make it as snazzy or as simple as you like. I added a little blingy because it's very 90s looking and I think it's fun. You can add some stats and other things, but it's just really important to start kind of building up your presence here. So I'm going to have this over here, and then I'm going to start following along on the left. So I'm going to scroll down, and before I start, I want to just mention also that I've gone through a career switch, which is 20 something years ago. I started out as a French teacher. I thought that I wanted to teach French. So you'll see little hints in my office about how I still really enjoy French literature. But I decided when the dot-com boom was sort of ramping down that I needed to make a career switch. There weren't so many jobs in my field, so I made that switch. And it would have been really cool to have had this opportunity to sort of walk along and build my resume, kind of reconstruct myself into a new field. So from that perspective, we're going to be kind of talking through how to go about setting up your resume. Okay, so I'm going to click on this link called Setup and just get started. And in this, there are several steps that we're going to all do together. So the first thing we need to do, since you've logged into GitHub, you've got your account ready to go, you need to create a repository. So I'm going to click on this repositories tab here. Boy, I have actually too many repositories. I really need to tidy up a little bit. But I'm going to click this big green button here and just create, with myself as owner, I'm going to just create resume. You can call it anything you want. Add a little description, my resume. You can add, as descriptive as you want. Make it public. Add a README. This is sort of like a little description, and you can build this out. It's a great idea to have a really verbose and informational README file. If you want to add a git ignore, you can, but we don't have enough code in this to really bother too much. But one thing I do want you to do is to pick a license. So I'm going to go ahead and add an MIT license. That's something that is important to have on all of your repos, just to make sure that everyone is visiting your open source code and using it the way that you want them to use it. So I'm making mine very permissive. That's the MIT license. So I'll go ahead and create this public repository on my personal account. And here is where it is. This is my README file. It appears as sort of a home page, and you can build this out as you like. But the next thing you need to do is open your magic finger, which is your ring finger here, and we're going to make sure our mouse is focused on the resume repository we just created, and press the period button. And that's going to do some magical thing, which is to open github.dev, which is your way to open up a whoops, there it goes. Give me a start for a minute. To open up GitHub and work in your browser as if you were working, locally, but it's actually right in the cloud in the browser. So this is a really, really helpful and cool experience. So we have our repository created. We opened it in github.dev. We're going to get a little helper installed here, which is an extension called CodeSwing. I'm going to search for this extension in the marketplace. CodeSwing. It's by Jonathan Carter, and it's really, really useful. So I'll click install. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to write code in half of the window and watch it build and compile and render in this window to my far right. So this is going to be a great way of kind of seeing where we're at and having the website almost open and live for us. It's not live, but it's going to go live very quickly. Okay, so we've done our repository, github.dev, we installed CodeSwing. I just want to make sure that as we go, we're saving all of our files neatly. So just select those 3 parallel lines on the far left-hand side of github.dev and just look for autosave in File Autosave. It's usually clicked by default, but just make sure it is so that your code is going to be saving up as you create it. So I hope you're still with me and that we've done all these things to get going in this interactive session. So once we've done all of that, which is basically installing all of our tooling, I'd like you to go ahead and click at the bottom, create our first page. So I'm going to go ahead and work with you to create your page. And as I go, I'm going to be asking Kristen for some tips and tricks. So what we're going to do is we're going to use CodeSwing to scaffold a file. So we're going to open the command palette by clicking on these dots here. Again, the 3 parallel line icons, and then go to View, Command Palette. And then the first one we see here is CodeSwing, because we just installed CodeSwing. So we see CodeSwing initialize workspace as swing. We're going to click on that, and then it's going to say, well, great, what kind of swing? I just want an HTML swing, that's all I need. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to scaffold me up an HTML page. And here's the magic of CodeSwing and of github.dev. So if I would say hello world, you can see that we have some HTML rendered over here. And if I would style it up nicely, like an H1, hello world, then it would be, without the mistake, it would be very good looking. So this is a really powerful tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to scaffold an HTML structure. Now, what is HTML? I like to call HTML the skeleton of the web because, funnily enough, it has a head and a body and a footer. So it's all the parts of your HTML of your web page in a sort of a skeleton format. So I'm going to scroll down to this chunk of HTML code. These are tags that you can use, HTML, and then the head, and then the body with some semantic HTML. So this is your header with an H1, which is your name. Some information about you, and then some articles with sections in between. So we have your context, skills, and education. Now you're recognizing what we saw earlier. And then on the right, we have our work experience. So I'm just going to copy this thing and paste it in. Great, this is very generic looking. So we're going to personalize this at this point. I hope you're still with me. So now we need to ask Kristen for some advice because my full name is Jennifer Yvonne Looper. So if I was to type that, first of all, it's a little long. I can't spell my own name. It's a little long, but also it's a little formal. And I usually just go by Jen. So what is the best practice here? I could type like Jennifer E. Kristen, what should I do here?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jen. I generally recommend that you use your legal name because oftentimes the name that you use to submit your application is your legal name. So the consistency is really nice, especially since there may be many Jen Loopers that apply to a Microsoft role. If you want to indicate your preferred name, you can mark that by putting Jen in parentheses. I think that's a great way to say my legal name's Jennifer, but I'm comfortable with you calling me Jen. Another thing I'd love to see candidates add more and more is their pronouns, because it's a great way for us recruiters to be able to know how you prefer to be identified.
I really like that idea. Does this look okay?
Looks great.
Okay, so far so good. Great. Here's another tricky one, because as a career changer, I could put, French teacher, and then the software people will be like, what are you doing? But could I say that, I'm an aspiring software engineer? So I have a very clicky keyboard as well, and former educator?
Yeah, I love that. I think this line is really making it whatever you want the recruiter to see first and foremost, how you identify when it comes to your career quest. Aspiring software engineer straight out tells me that's the role that you're interested in being qualified for. And the former educator is intriguing to me because I'll see that and I'll think, what does that mean? Is she a former educator of computer science? Did she teach some other subject? I love that because it's a big part of your story. And so I think any way that you want to just quick snapshot about who you are as a candidate and what role you're interested in, that's where this line can come into good use.
Sounds good. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say I'm a former French literature educator. Just like make everybody freak out from the get-go, right? Okay.
I love it.
Again, oh, and also I wanted to ask whether I should put junior here since I'm aspiring.
In my personal opinion, I think if you feel like that's how you want to properly tell your story, that you believe you're a junior software engineer, by all means, put that there. But I also think that you can let the recruiter qualify where you or calibrate where you would fall into level wise. So based off of your experience, I would review and be able to see, where would I place this candidate? Would I say that they are a good fit for this more junior level software engineer? Or do I think their experience could maybe allow them to be a great fit for a higher level role? So if you don't want to put those parameters on you, then there's no need for you to put that level marker there. But if you are proud about being a junior software engineer or a senior level software engineer, by all means, you're more than welcome to put that there.
That sounds really, really like good advice, I think. That's a tricky one. Cool. Okay, so now we've scaffolded the top. Let's talk about all these articles here in the left side. So we're going to have contact and skills in education. And I feel like these are very important things to just have from, really nicely fleshed out. And we'll talk about work experience in a minute. But let's talk about contact. So we can go ahead and click to the next screen and talk through contact, because I feel like this is really tricky. If I was to go here and just put a paragraph and add a link to my email, that's part of the story, right? But what about, like, I have a really cool TikTok and Twitter presence. Should I put all that stuff in? What about LinkedIn? What about GitHub? What should I put here?
Contact, the contact section is one of the most important parts of your resume because it allows the recruiter to know how to get a hold of you, especially if we want to pursue you for an interview. So I recommend that you have your email address, which you do, which is great. And then I would recommend adding your phone number because two methods of getting in contact with you is better than one. When it comes to your social medias, so in my personal opinion, I don't think it's necessary. I'll caveat that with saying this is your story. A resume is a way for you to say, this is who I am as a candidate. This is the whole me. So if you feel like that's a part of who you want to, talk about and a part of you that you want to share with the recruiter, you're more than welcome to. But in my opinion, I wouldn't select a candidate based off of their social media accounts. What accounts I would love to see is your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is the largest professional network platform in the world, which is incredible. There's 722 million users. So I recommend you're a part of that user base. And another great account to put on there is GitHub, because especially if you're interested in a software engineering role, GitHub is a wonderful collaborative platform to be able to showcase your code.
Right. Okay, so we'll assume that these are properly linked. I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure about the LinkedIn one. I'd have to check. Great. Okay, so we've got those three things in there. About the phone number, probably put in your country code so that they know where you're located.
Yes, that would be best practice.
I think it's like US is 33. Don't remember, something like that. But I wanted to ask also about address. How granular do I need to get in this area? Should I put my full address in here?
I think that's up to you. I will say we're in this virtual space now, right? Where there's a lot of companies, especially in the tech world, that are hybrid friendly, remote friendly. So if you wanted to indicate location, you could just put your city and state, perhaps. And if you wanted to add on another detail, you could add your country, especially if you're looking for international roles outside of the country that you reside in. So yeah, it's up to you, but I don't think it's necessary to put your full home address.
Okay, so does this look all right? We're getting somewhere.
That looks great.
Super. Okay, here's another thorny one. How about skills and education? Let's start with skills. So the instructions here in the workshop are to paste some boilerplate here, but of course we want to personalize this. And what's the best way to personalize? I'm feeling like there are a couple things we could do. We could order them by expertise and maybe tell a little more about our expertise. What should I do here?
It's up to you. I've seen it done many different ways. The most common way that skills are listed that I've seen is where you list the skill like you've shown, JavaScript, and in parentheses, you would indicate what your proficiency level is. I've also seen candidates list them just naturally from most proficient to least proficient. However, if you don't indicate that on your resume somewhere, then you're leaving it up to the recruiter to just assume, which is not best practice. And then the third way I've seen is alphabetizing them. But once again, that doesn't indicate proficiency level. So I think it is best practice to do parentheses, because then I'll see that you are most confident and probably competent in JavaScript. And therefore, I will be looking for the application of your skills in your experience.
Great. Now, something that falls in between these two sections, between skills and education, are certifications. So where do you think I should put, like, if I have my AZ900, I want to put it here somewhere, but how should I put it?
It's up to you, Jen. You could put it in the skills. You could add a subsection of certifications. You could also add it in the education part, because essentially you're saying, here are my credentials that are indicated by some sort of, diplomacy or certificate that I've received.
Okay, I'm just going to put a couple of those certs in here. Yeah, it's funny. It's like skills, education is right in between. So good to know. But I think it's important to have these things on a technical resume. It shows that you're kind of committed, right?
Mhm.
Okay, great. So then we need to think about our education. So here's a little bit of a snippet to paste in here. We need to, of course, format it nicely, and we need to tell our story here. So I'm going to say my education in an H3. I'm going to say that I'm going to work from the most recent to the least recent. So it would be something like PhD French literature, and then I'm going to say University of California. Why is it so long? Berkeley. And then, oh boy, the dates. It was actually 1990. No, whoa, 1992, like 3,000 years ago. And 1998. Yeah, that's right. Okay. What else can I put here in terms of, so we're telling the story that I'm a career switcher, so I'm putting all of this, PhD, master's, BA. Is there a moment where I can like demonstrate that I switched by maybe taking some online courses? Is this a good place for that?
Yeah, that'd be great. One thing I do want to call attention to, Jen, is I love that you have a PhD in French literature. And I am intrigued by you as a candidate. You are what we would call, yes, a career changer, but also a non-traditional candidate. And at Microsoft, we're looking for candidates that are representing our full user base. So when I see that you have a French literature PhD, I automatically think that is so interesting. Jen's going to have a diversity of thought that she will bring to the table that maybe a traditional computer science student may not have to contribute. And so I use that, I view that as a strength, and I encourage you to use that as your strength as well. Because I know that some candidates maybe feel a bit uncomfortable sharing what their degrees are if they aren't in line with what a traditional degree would be for the role that they're interested in.
Yeah, I'll tell you for a fact that I hid this piece for at least 20 years. I didn't talk about it. I dropped the whole education thing right off and just put it under skills, because I went through Macromedia University, which is like the very early online, skilling up. So, but yeah, I think for the online topics, I think we could also add those in here. Like if someone maybe got some Coursera courses here, or
Yeah, I think that's great. And you know what that also shows is that you truly must be passionate in being a software engineer. If you're going on your own accord and you are pursuing these degrees and these courses and completing them in your own time, that is amazing. That's someone that I would want to hire just by the simple fact of you just being passionate about this work.
this actually didn't happen, but I'm going to go ahead and put it on just as a sample. Okay. But I know they're like online courses that you could pop into here, so that's cool. Okay. Great. That's good to know. It's good to know. It's good to hear.
Something I do want to add real quick, Jen, is the graduation date is imperative for university candidates. So what that means is if you are interested in going through a university recruiting process and you're currently enrolled in university, the way for me to know whether you're eligible for a full-time or an internship role is based off of your grad date. So in the industry space, so for you, it's up to you, right? It's not a requirement, but in the university space, it is a requirement.
What about folks who will be graduating like next semester? We used to say ABD, all but dissertation. I don't think that's the thing anymore.
No, I would say if you are a university candidate, I would have your graduation date. Okay.
Very good. Cool. Okay, let's talk about our experience. So again, this is your story. So let's talk about what should a new developer or a career changer consider when building their professional experience section. I'll scaffold this out and start building, and we can talk about this. So work experience. What am I going to put in here? One thing is I'm telling people that I'm an experienced JavaScript developer, right? So I need to kind of prove that. So I would put something like my job title was JavaScript team lead, company name, example. And then this is how long I've worked at that job. And I think maybe I could put something like led a team to refactor, legacy JavaScript code to upgrade to ES6, so modern JavaScript. Is that a good thing to talk about?
Yes, I would say the work experience truly is the meat of your resume. This is where I will see, do you meet the qualifications for this role? Do you apply your skills into the experience so you're showcasing that impact? Some feedback on what you wrote. I love that you're right from the beginning saying you're leading a team or you led a team. My first question would be, what's the quantifiable impact there? How many people were in that team? What was the impact of the work that you did on that team? Any way that you can quantify impact through numbers is really powerful, because you think about how many resumes recruiters are looking through, the more that you can have numbers pop out on the page, the more it's going to tell me quickly the impact that you're making.
Okay, I'm going to give some percentages here.
It's great.
Something like that. Here, I'll scroll up so you can see. There we go. But yeah, so I think, yeah, numbers at this point in these little LIs, the little lists are really important, so that you can say, yes, I've led people and I deleted a lot of code, or my team deleted a lot of code, which makes everyone happy, and improve the code perf. So something like that. Yeah, what are some other examples we could give of good things? What's jumped out at you on a candidate's profile in this?
Yeah, collaboration is so key, especially for a position at Microsoft. I've yet to find a role at Microsoft where you're not working with others. So any way that you can display the collaborative spirit that you have, whether it's competitions you've been a part of in hackathons, whether it's on your team, how did you collaborate with others to make impact, to have great results? We always look for people to have those results. What happened when you solved that problem? What's the outcome? How can I know that your application of that skill that you listed above really did solve something? All of those allow us to then say the skill set's here and this is transferable into the role that they're interested in.
Oh, that's good to know. So maybe one thing we could consider is, for a very new candidate who maybe hasn't had that professional experience, or even an internship, could say experience, and then they could say the hackathon that they participated in, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually something I was going to add, Jen, is, these are 4 main markers to have on your resume, but by all means, I think if people want to add their volunteer experience, their extracurricular activities, anything else that showcases who you are as a candidate, I think that's great. In the university space, we see that a lot. Club involvement, volunteer experience, other ways to indicate impact outside of the classroom. That's a great thing to share.
So I actually run a foundation called Front End Classes. So I'm going to say that I led a team of mentors.
And that's another thing. I would be intrigued by knowing, what is that? I want to know all about, how did you found that? What's the history of it? How did you go about becoming the founder of it? Anything that you would love to talk about with the recruiter or hiring manager, I think it's great to put on your resume.
All right. Wow, we're starting to flesh this resume out pretty well. I'm pretty excited. Now I feel like I need to actually rebuild my own resume and redo the whole thing. Okay, so yes, we've fleshed out the skeleton of our resume, but it doesn't, to be perfectly honest, it does not look that great. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this area and take a visit of the CSS area to add some CSS to this page. You noticed in the top we have a little link with the href to link into a file called style CSS. So I'll just go ahead and create a new file here called style CSS. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that this lays out with your name and your title across the top, and then 2 columns, so that it'll be a little easier to read. So the first thing we need to do is to scrape this chunk of CSS right here and just pop it into here. And already we've made changes, right? We fixed up the font face pretty well. And you can make the font face anything you like as long as it's nice and readable. And then I'm going to go ahead and leverage CSS Grid. So here we have with this main area of our index page up here, we're going to turn it into a grid. So in Style CSS, I'm just going to take this CSS and post it right in. And a sneaky thing we're going to do at the end of this is to save this as a PDF. So I wanted to make sure that the little border that we add disappears. Right? So we added this border on the right. So it's a column and a little border and then a light gray border and then the other column. I don't want to see that on the PDF. So I'm just taking a media query and making sure that on a print version of this, we won't see that border. So it'll look something like this actually, and it'll flow right on down. And of course, there's tweaks you can make to your CSS to make it look that much better. But basically what we just did is we split into two columns. Let me see if I can take the code swing and make it a little bigger. So you can see, okay, make the whole thing bigger. There we go. And there's the columns. And now it's gonna float back. Okay, there we go. So we have a nice responsive design. And there we go. Okay, so that's our CSS so far. And we just made this like 2-column layout. I'm going to stop here and just ask, how aesthetically pleasing does your resume need to be in this current day and age? Because I've seen some stunning resumes. People are, you know, really using beautiful colors and adding their pictures. And what do you care about?
I care about the content. To be honest, I think when one makes it aesthetically pleasing, it's for the benefit of that person, right? And I think that if you want to have your picture and you want to have it be different text colors and fonts, that's completely up to you. This is your story to tell. But when it comes to objectively reviewing the resume, I'm really focused on your skill set, on your education, on your experience, and other things that you want to talk about when it comes to you being a qualified candidate.
Oh, good. Okay. So very, very nice. I like a clean look anyway, so
Yeah,
we'll go from
same
there.
way.
So we have our resume. We have something scaffolded. I hope that many, many people have built their resume alongside of us. And we're at step 4 of this little workshop that we're doing with you. And what we need to do now is deploy it onto our website. So you remember we created our repo. We're working in github.dev, although maybe you've forgotten because the experience is so seamless. I actually forgot I was working, in my browser because it just feels so natural at this point. So we're going to go ahead and you notice here, this is my source control icon, and my changes are not yet into my repository. So I'm just going to say, make a commit and say new resume all set. And then I'm going to click the little check. And it's pushing, and now everything's up and in the cloud. So if I would go to change.dev to .com, we'll go to my resume here, and you can see the files, including the CodeSwing JSON. So if we ever want to work in CodeSwing again, using this experience, we can reduplicate the experience. But here we've got our index HTML and our style CSS, and now what we need to do is push this whole thing to the cloud. So all you have to do is pop over to settings, pages, and use your source as main, your branch, which is main usually, and just save. And it's going to fire up a build for us, and our resume will eventually be on whatever your username is, .github.io, and then whatever your repository name is. So I'm going to go over to GitHub Actions and just watch this build. And as we're watching, we can talk about how to workshop this resume out to folks who need to look at it. Where's the best place to add this resume? I'm sure that popping it into my GitHub is one piece of it, but it's not the whole piece. What do I need to do next?
The first thing, and this is, I'll speak on behalf of Microsoft, is you need to submit an application. This is you saying, me as the candidate is opting in to applying for this role, and that's where you will attach the resume as a PDF or a Word document. Another place to leverage this work is putting it on your LinkedIn. As I shared earlier, LinkedIn has millions of users, and that means there's millions of recruiters on there potentially, So if you want to be found, that's a great platform to connect and showcase why you're a great candidate. That's a wonderful place to put it as well. And then, as you mentioned earlier, GitHub would be a great place to host your resume.
I think the power play here is really LinkedIn, actually. I know for a fact because my daughter has has mastered keywords on LinkedIn, and now she dwells in a very interesting niche as a writer, and she just gets loads of leads off LinkedIn, and I'm so proud of that. That's like incredible girl boss move, right? So
Yeah, LinkedIn's the place to
yeah,
be.
LinkedIn is awesome. So we actually have a published site. Are you all ready to look? Ah, there it is. I'm so excited.
Great.
So this is, very minimalistic, and there's lots of things we can do to fancy it up and make it better. But what I wanted to do is to sneakily take your advice and print this, not to my printer, but as a PDF. So I'm going to save this as a PDF. I'm going to save it portrait. So if you wanted to save it as landscape, you could do that. But I'm going to save it as portrait. And then you just save it to your computer and upload it to LinkedIn. So any other sneaky things we can tell folks on?
No, I think that's it. I think having it in PDF form is great and will allow you to attach it to your applications.
There it is. Fantastic. Great. So congratulations, everyone. So you successfully created your resume website entirely in the browser using HTML, CSS, GitHub.dev, that's a mouthful, and GitHub pages. And there are lots of ways that you can kind of boost your skills as a developer. These are all tools that you can use to skill up and to get better at what you're working on. But I want to go ahead and move back to the slides briefly and just finish this session by talking about some cool tools that I'd love for you to visit. The first one is the Introduction to JavaScript, which is a learn path, and it walks through how to get comfortable with JavaScript, functions and variables and methods and all these good things. That was created by our team based on our curricula. There's also a very interesting link here, which was also created by our team. It's another learn path, and it's called, it's the Tech Intern learning path, and it walks you through how to get noticed by, via your work and your great resume and your online presence, and how to land an internship, how to get through interviews, and your first day on the job. So it's a really innovative and cool learning path that I'd love for you to visit, and I hope you like the drawings because I did those. And then if you are a student specifically, take a look at our Student Ambassadors program, so AKA MS Student Ambassadors. This is a really great place to to connect with students from all over the world and do really amazing activities. And you can also participate in things like the Imagine Cup, which we just celebrated our 20-year anniversary. And there's all sorts of great activities happening in the Student Ambassador program. And then Kristen, you want to talk about the last couple links here?
Yes, so the listed link there is the careers website for university students. So if you are a university candidate, go to microsoft.com/university. And if you are an industry candidate, you can go to careers.microsoft.com. And I know that we are a bit running over time. And I think, honestly, Jen, that's just because you and I were just in such deep conversation, rich conversation, but we're going to kick it back over to Salman and Gwen to go through some questions.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much, Jen and Kristen. This has been such an amazing session. I've been making my own notes, so like more numbers, the better. Putting your graduation date on your resume, all of these things, because hey, I just finished my university, so there's so many things to take note of. And hey, who knew that you could host your resume on that with GitHub as well? And that has a history with the Git commit history.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to do that once we're done with this session.
Awesome. So the first question we're going to go off and ask is, hey, if I want to take my resume to the next level outside of a README, what other tools can I use for my website?
So this is about building a website or building a resume?
This is a mix between, I guess, perhaps using GitHub Pages or something for your resume to take it even further.
Oh, well, I think that while you have the basic skeleton of a resume here, which has a very specific task, what you really want to also do is create a beautiful portfolio for yourself that shows off your work, and also build up your GitHub presence with a nice, if you noticed my fabulous GitHub presence, you can create a homepage for yourself. So there's a lot that GitHub really offers you. And if you create a repository called your username, then you can create this README with all kinds of extra things that you want to call out about yourself. But a nice portfolio and a nice website for yourself is a win-win-win because you can really show your skills as a developer. So that's the next step I would take.
That's awesome. Yeah, I personally do have my own portfolio with some projects as well. But I think this next question might be a follow-up to that is, how do I communicate like technical projects that I've worked on my resume?
Kristen, do you want to try on this one?
Yeah, I'd be curious to know more about, what they specifically want to know. But I'll go back to what I shared is quantifying your impact. So if you're working on a technical project, really being able to talk about what skills did you use in that experience. You don't need to go in too much detail with all of the context around it because you only have a limited space for your experience, but really focus on what was the problem, how did you solve it, and what were the results. And that's a great method to follow when you want to talk about your experience.
One thing you could do is build out your homepage on GitHub and pin the most special repos that you really want to showcase. And then what I always recommend also is to build out an astounding README. Like your README should have everything that you want to explain. So I have, video on this, blogs, extra resources, FAQ, and the project setup. So, and a nice image. This is quite the project. But GitHub just allows you to really showcase yourself. So let's leverage it.
Yeah, I'm super inspired by your profile on GitHub, Jen. I was trying to go along with the session, creating my own resume there as well. So after this, I'm going to try and improve it over there. We have a question specifically on a technical portion here, and it's with CodeSwing. Does it also provide the same level of support for other languages like Solidity, TypeScript, JavaScript?
I think as long as your code doesn't have to compile, I really would need to do research on this one, but I don't think you're going to be able to scaffold up a Vue.js app. I may be wrong. Let's just check.
Yeah, this is what we do every day in tech roles. We Google things.
Google it.
But,
look, it's a playground for VS Code and it's on Best of React.js. So honestly, I think you can use it for pretty much everything.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that.
I think we have time for one more question here. And they wanted to know a little bit more about how can we talk about, or how should we work around gaps in our resume?
Oh, brilliant question. Yes. Kristen, let's talk about that.
Yeah, listen, we're in this 2022 year. We've all had a wild ride the past 2 years. We understand. And when I say we, I'm going to speak on behalf of me as a recruiter at Microsoft. I understand that you are a human, okay? And people have to take gaps for whatever reason. And in my opinion, I wouldn't hold that against a candidate because you can't control what happens. Maybe you have to take care of someone who's sick, or maybe you have to take some time off to work. That's fine. But I say that calling it out if you feel like that's something you want to talk about on your resume, by all means, I empower you to do that. But if you also don't want to draw attention to that gap by listing out, your gap studying abroad or took time off to work in a side job, that's okay. It's I'm going to focus on what you put down on as your experience and see, okay, based off of what they're sharing with me, regardless if there's a gap or not, how can I see if they're qualified for this role? And that's how recruiters will objectively review the resume.
Great question.
That is really awesome advice. And hey, I think that's all the time we have left for questions. But if you do want to ask more, feel free to reach out to Jen or Kristen online. And also, hey, with these sessions, I want to remind you that we have all of the resources available on the GitHub repository, so do check this out. Also, the AI gaming, I keep mentioning this. We have AI gaming, we have the Minecraft time machine, and the Cloud Skills Challenge. So that's really awesome.
Exactly. Just more ways to get hands-on. Kristen and Jen, thank you so much for this session. And stay tuned because we still have more here at Intro to Tech Skills. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.